CBS Sports Radio.
The only way you can take CBS Sports Radio 1140 with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and listen to us anytime, anywhere. We've got your Raiders covered.
Knock on wood if you're with me.
It's Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio 1140. And now, here's your host, Scott Gulbransen.
Good morning, Las Vegas. Good morning, Raider Nation. Welcome to Las Vegas's only all Raiders talk show, Silver and Black today, here on CBS Sports Radio 1140, as week number 6 of Bunker Broadcasting continues, and we have a date. That's right, Nevada will begin opening up here in a few weeks, we hope. Hopefully some normalcy returns here and all over the country, and we hope you and your family are doing well. I'm Scott Gulbransen, founder of Silver and Black Today, where you can also find the city's only independent Raiders news source, the only one, covering the Raiders based here in Las Vegas at silverandblacktoday.com. Check it out. Also, reminder, we are streaming today's show live via the radio.com app. That's the best way to take the show with you if you want to listen to us every Sunday. All the great programming you find here on CBS Sports Radio 1140, as well as talk music from all over the country. Download it for your iOS or Android device. Also, we stream the show live via video on YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope, which you can now watch. We're still not in the studio, clearly, so you don't get to see as dynamic a video and our smiling faces every morning, at least after coffee. But go subscribe on YouTube. Join in the listener chat there. The chat is always on fire. Good stuff. So good morning to you all listening to us or watching us in one of those platforms. So thanks for being with us. On today's show, some great guests you don't want to miss. In the first hour, we asked the question, do the Raiders have enough with their excellent free agent signings and the addition of all these young offensive weapons in the draft to compete with the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC West right now? We'll ask that question, discuss how the rest of the AFC West improved or didn't. The guys will jump in on that and we'll discuss. Also in the first hour, our good friend and Raiders beat writer for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Vinny Bonsignore, joins us. He gets in on the AFC West discussion. He'll give us his take on where the Raiders are, how the division may shake out. And we'll also ask him a little bit about his recent piece on our favorite guy, Tanner Muse. And I use that as nothing against Tanner Muse. We just still didn't see it, so we're going to ask him about that. In the second hour, we'll all return. We all want to return to Raiders football. We all can't wait for the fall and the return of the NFL season. But could the season start later than usual due to the pandemic? Could the bye week be canceled and the Pro Bowl scuttled? We'll talk to Sports Business Journal reporter Ben Fischer, one of the best in the business. He'll give us the latest on the NFL schedule, contingency plans, should the season need to be delayed, and what it means for competitive balance in the league. That'll be a fascinating discussion you won't want to miss. Then we'll break down some film with Sanjit Toor, who runs the popular YouTube channel Sanjit T, where he breaks down film of Raiders players and plays during the season with the focus today on Lynn Bowden Jr. We'll hear how he thinks the dynamic young player will fit in at running back for the Raiders. Now I bring in my co-host, starting with Mr. Chaz Osborne. How you doing, man? You ready for those golf courses to be back open?
I was out yesterday.
I figured. That's good, man. Before it got windy, or were you in that wind lull?
The wind wasn't too bad. It was a beautiful day. The weather was perfect. It's been nice here. It's just, being cramped up so long, it's time to get out. At least a little bit of golf's nice, getting outside and enjoying this good weather we're having.
Well, they opened up pickleball too, but you didn't go play pickleball?
And tennis, I don't even know. Where do you play pickleball?
Exactly. I think that all 14 people in the state who play pickleball were very excited. And for 2 more weeks, and this is part of an announcement we have today, Mr. Kelly Kreiner. And Kelly, we want to share that news with listeners to you that you've decided to step away from the show on your own to focus on other things. And I know folks will miss your presence on the show, but we want to thank you for being part of it and helping us build the show. And hopefully at least after you're done over the next 2 weeks and you leave, we'll get you to climb out of the shadows at draft time and come on occasionally when we need a dose of Kelly's Corner. Right, Kelly?
I don't know, man. I'm reading this article about murder hornets. I mean, the COVID-19 wasn't bad enough. Now apparently we have murder hornets coming after us.
You know what's funny about the Murder Hornets thing was a lot of people were jumping on that and saying, man, what a great sports mascot for a team name. And I agree. I think it would be awesome. You're the Murder Hornets, right? Because they have the new AHL hockey team that's going to be here in Henderson outside Las Vegas, the Golden Knights farm team. And a lot of people are saying, oh, they should call it the Murder Hornets. And I'm like, yeah, it wouldn't be too bad, except that now people are deathly afraid of these freaking Hornets killing them. So, but it'll be fun. But seriously, Kelly, no, we of course appreciate you. I know the listeners love you, at least most of them. And we're gonna
say it. I don't know about that.
But you know what? That's the beauty of.
50.
Well, I think it's more than 50-50. I think on the good side. But you know what? That's the thing. You know, you have guests, you have co-hosts, you have me, host. Some people, you look, no matter what you do, you could cure cancer, pay off everybody's debt in the world, and there'd still be 10% of people who despise you. So it doesn't matter. But you've brought a lot to the show, man. And we're going to miss you. We got a couple more weeks with you, obviously, this week and next week before you step away. But thank you again for doing that. And I know when you have some burning hot thing that you got to get off your chest. But anyway, we're going to move on, and Kelly's Corner will be later in the show. So, guys, the stadium. So I want to talk about this just at the top of the show here because lots of concern again from Raider Nation after more reports, quote-unquote, rumors surface about an increased number of COVID-19 cases at the Allegiant Stadium construction site, which is true. There's now up to like 14 or 16. I can't remember the last count. But because of that, there's been rumors flying around about a delay in construction. And then there's this doom and gloom. These folks that, listen, we've all taken this thing seriously, at least most of us. This doom and gloom about no fans being in the stands. Now, I'm not saying that won't happen or it couldn't happen, but it's a little bit out of control again. Anyone who tells you that they know what's going to happen is just full of it. And so to me, we know the stadium will not be delayed. I talked with Tommy White from the Laborers Union, who you all know well here on this show, this week, ad nauseum about this. He said, look, there's no delay. Okay. Yes, they're going to do these random tests, but there's not going to be a delay with the stadium. He said, no way. It's on schedule. Also, I talked to someone in the Raider organization this week who told me unequivocally that they have no concerns about the stadium being completed, none whatsoever. And that also that same person inside the organization told me that talk of games with no fans, etc., are premature and they're just not based in facts. Yes, the NFL has been modeling all sorts of random and exhaustive plans should things be terrible in one area and not in the other. Okay, so it's not that it couldn't happen, but people are out there saying like it's a fact and it's not going to happen. And if you say that, you just don't know what you're talking about. And guys, I think that's what we learned during this pandemic too about people in general, not just with sports. It's like, look, like most cases nowadays, the truth is somewhere in the middle. So don't buy into people who are doom and gloom, and don't buy into the people who are denying that there's any challenges. You guys get it?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a fluid situation right now. Like the NFL's coming out, they're going to be releasing the schedule and everything. They're planning and they're putting up that forward face that everything's going to go on a schedule because you kind of have to. You know, you can't.
Right.
You're trying. The NFL needs a TV product more than they need anything else. Mm-hmm. So for them, worst case scenario is no fans in the stands. But as long as they get their scheduled number of games on television, they're still getting their TV money, which all that matters to them.
Right, and the TV companies, like you said, the networks, they need their product, right? I mean, we've listened. I've been watching every day at 3:00. It's the weirdest quarantine habit that I've formed, and that is at 3:00 every day. It's kind of the end of my day. I sit down and I watch an episode of This Week in Baseball from the 80s, right? That's how bad sports has been. I love This Week in Baseball, though. It reminds me of my childhood, right? But the thing is, and I swore I wouldn't watch these old games, but I'm watching last night the Padres 1984 Game 4 against the Cubs. I'm sure you remember that, Kelly.
I knew you were watching that.
That was on last night
on Twitter.
Yeah,
you were watching that. I about blocked you.
but nonetheless, I think that yes, the TV stuff. We're going to find out the schedule. It's supposed to be released on Thursday, if all goes according to plan. And later in the show, as I mentioned in the intro, Ben Fischer from the Sports Business Journal. This guy is one of the best reporters to report on the NFL, the NFL's TV issues and contracts and intricacies. He's going to be with us at the top of the second hour to talk just about this. So if you want real information from people who really cover it and know more than maybe we do and you do, then listen to Ben Fischer at the top of the hour. But yeah, they have to take into consideration. And the fascinating question that we're going to ask Ben too is, look, in New York, it's bad. In Nevada, not so much. So if the Raiders kick off the season and everything's open here, why wouldn't you have fans in the stadium? But in New York, if it's still bad, you might not have fans in the stadium. And then what does that competitive imbalance look like? And how do you do that? I don't think you can do it. So we'll talk to him about that. It's going to be a fascinating discussion as well. But, I just, you see these people panicking about all sorts of things. And you just realize at times like this, you kind of learn how people deal with challenges and stress and all that kind of stuff. And hey, look, stress gets to all of us at some point, and we can buckle. But man, there's some people out there, some really well-known journalists and such that I follow, who every day it's just doom and gloom. And I just can't do that, man. I just can't believe that there's going to be, quote unquote, a new normal. Yeah, there's changes because of things happen to us, just like after 9/11. But come on, let's just relax. We'll get back to sports. It won't be exactly the same right when we get back, but over time, I think it'll normalize.
Well, let's hope so, because, it's been long enough. Last night I was actually with a couple friends. We were in, their backyard smoking cigars, keeping our social distancing thing alive. And you kind of forget what it's like to be around people.
Yeah.
It's like, it was just 5 people that I usually hang out with all the time. Hadn't seen them all together in over 2 months, and it was like the greatest thing. It was like a 20-year high school reunion. That's just how long it. You just like our one buddy. Robert Scott. He hadn't shaved in 6 weeks. He actually has a beard now, and we made fun of him because he couldn't grow a beard. Oh, dude, I wanted to pull change out of my pocket, give it to him. I felt bad for him because it was a terrible beard. But I mean, it's been so long since we've had anything close to normalcy. We'll take anything we can get at this point. Yeah,
well, what is normal is we take a break at 15 after, so we're going to do that. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the AFC West. The rest of the next 2 times we talk to you here in this hour, we're going to talk about the AFC West, right? That's where the Raiders are. Can they compete right now? We're going to ask the question amongst ourselves. We're going to talk about who did well in the draft, who improved themselves, who did not. We'll get the guys' opinions on that. Then at the bottom of the hour, we'll bring in Vinny Bonsignore of the Las Vegas Review-Journal to talk about that. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands.
was created by real language teachers.
CBS Sports Radio. You found the most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black. This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gulbransen.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 on a Sunday. We're always here with you Sunday. Now, it is May, so as we go into this month, starting next week, just a reminder, we go down to what we call our summer hours. That's right. For the next couple months, we're down to 1 hour show while the NFL is kind of dead. We'll still have great interviews, still have great content. We'll be here for you, but just want you to know we go from 2 hours to 1, and then once we get back and camp starts a little before that, we start back at 2 hours. Just so you know, we'll still be here at 8 o'clock. We'll be here from 8 to 9 instead of 8 to 10 starting next week on Mother's Day. So make sure you are mindful of that. We'll only be for an hour, but hey, that's okay. You still be at 8 o'clock. You still get up, get your coffee, get ready to sit down with us and talk Raiders football. Okay, as we look post-draft at the Raiders, listen, I think most fans very, very excited about what the team did, not only in free agency during the offseason leading up to the draft, but also in the draft with these young, dynamic, exciting players, especially on offense and some on defense too, which we'll talk about a little bit here as well. And so the question is, as Mike Mayock, John Gruden continue to say, part of their narrative now continually, almost every time they do an interview, is around chasing the Kansas City Chiefs. Look, the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. They are the defending Super Bowl champions. They are the class of the division at this point. That doesn't last forever. And so we have to ask the question, have they built a team competitive enough to challenge the Chiefs now as you go into 2020, all things being equal? That doesn't include injuries. It doesn't include crazy things that may happen between now and then. Just looking on paper, which can be dangerous. But guys, when we look at this, and what the Raiders have done, they've addressed so many of their needs. Their defense got a lot better with the additions they had at linebacker with Littleton, Kwiatkowski, and in the draft with people like Amik Robertson and, of course, Demarius Randall. The question for you guys from a high-level standpoint is this enough yet? Now, it's a rebuilding process. They're in phase 3 now. But are they there yet to the point where do you think, and I'll start with you, Kelly, that they can challenge the Chiefs now?
They're still they're still a step behind or step below, but they can definitely challenge the Chiefs, but I don't think anybody's going to come out and say that they're expecting anybody but the Chiefs to win the division. The big thing, like when they got Henry Ruggs, everybody's like, well, they got their Tyreek Hill. That's good and all, but until you get somebody who's on the level of a Patrick Mahomes, you're always going to be behind the Chiefs. And this isn't a knock on Derek Carr because nobody's on the level of Patrick Mahomes in the NFL. So you're automatically starting off at a disadvantage trying to copy a system that you can't copy. You shouldn't be a copy. I know everybody says it's a copycat league, but yeah, that's the reason that the Patriots won 50 AFC East titles in a while, because people are trying to copy something you can't copy. You got to innovate. You got to find a way to beat the thing that you're beating, not try to follow in its footsteps.
Right. That's the same thing I said a couple of weeks ago. You're not trying to be the Chiefs. You're trying to be the best Raiders team that you can be. And I think they're well on their way to doing that. John Gruden, obviously has a great scheme, and they're putting all the pieces exactly how he wants them. And they're going to be able to, take that next step. But I don't think that next step's going to make them a clear-cut, choice to beat the Chiefs. I think they'll be competitive with them. I'm a Raider fan. I said it last year. Both those games against the Chiefs. Oh yeah, they played them well. You take away that second quarter. Well, you can't do that. The Chiefs had that second quarter. They smoked them in the first game. Raiders played them tough in the second game, and they ultimately got steamrolled again. So, they're moving in the right direction, but, the Chiefs are already there. And I'm hoping maybe a Super Bowl hangover happens. Or, something get the Raiders a little closer. But for now, I don't think they're on that level.
Well, and to me, you look at, I think the Raiders are getting a lot of national attention about the fact that they could be that team who could push the Chiefs the most. Now, I think you look at what the Broncos did in the draft. Not everybody loved the Broncos draft. I thought they had a pretty good draft. And I think the Chargers had a good draft too. They have a good defense. The quarterback position, we'll see what happens there. But if you look at this, one of the things that I think, to your guys' point about, you don't want to be the Chiefs, but you need to build your team to beat them, to compete with them, to nullify some of their strengths. And I think they've done that. And of course, part of that was this whole offense. And Coach Gruden on the Raiders podcast on their website, which is hosted by JT the Brick, talked about the offense and kind of what Henry Ruggs does for it. And I want to play this because I think you hear a little bit of maybe what their plan is. So here's Gruden talking about the Raiders offense and their new tools.
Ruggs' speed, his strength, his playing style, his versatility is something that we feel like we have to have back in this organization. We were known for speed in years past, and we're going to be known for speed going forward. And he's a hard-working kid. Everybody's going to love him. We're going to put 3 tight ends out there, Moreau, Waller, Jason Witten, and we're going to run it and play action, and we're going to play old-school football. We have a fullback, so we're going to use a 2-back set with Josh Jacobs and Ingold. And now we have the receivers to spread you out. If we want to go 4 wides or 5 wides at a time, that's what we'll do. But we have the ability now, I think, with our personnel to adapt on a weekly basis to attack whoever we're playing and play aggressively.
Well, there you go, guys. So you hear Gruden talk about that, right? But when you think about what defenses, Kelly, they're going to face in the AFC West, we look at the Chargers defense, we look at the Broncos defense, and we kind of know the Chiefs defense. Yes, they won the Super Bowl, and they played really well towards the end of the year. But when you look at that offense that the Raiders are now building, what are they going to be going up against in the division that's going to give them trouble?
I think the Raiders are the second best team in the division, but you mentioned it earlier. I don't know who didn't like the Broncos draft, but if somebody doesn't like their draft, they're a moron, because they've put everything that they can around Drew Lock to find out whether or not he's their quarterback or not, which is what John Elway had to do. The Chargers got their so-called quarterback of the future, but I'm not too worried about them. It's all about the Chiefs. And it's going to be all about the Chiefs as long as Patrick Mahomes is out there, because Tyreek Hill's a great player, but you're going to see it this year when McCole Hardman takes a big step up. Sammy Watkins is going to be gone after this year. They're going to get somebody else in there. And this is going to be an offense that you can kind of pick and choose and throw people in there, and it's not going to fall off.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, Scott, you're talking about the defense, and the Chargers, obviously they're going to have a little bit of a quarterback thing going on this season, and like Kelly just said, we're not sure about Drew Lock yet, but the Chargers still have Bosa and Ingram, and they drafted Kenneth Murray, right, and Derwin James, your guy. So there's not going to be any games off in the AFC West this year. Every game's going to be tough, and then the Broncos, their head coach is all about defense, and they've still got that tough defense. And yeah, they just drafted Judy and Hamler, and they got faster and more dynamic. But in free agency, they got Melvin Gordon, and I'm not sure about Drew Lock yet. I'm sure he takes another step, but I don't think it's going to be that much. And I really feel like this whole coronavirus lockout is going to affect those teams like the Chargers and the Broncos. They won't have that time to kind of gel and get to know each other and get those plays and those reps that every team kind of needs to build on. So the Raiders and the Chiefs will have that advantage, kind of having this core of players that they've had together for a few years already.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think that it's going to be a tough, every single, I mean, listen, the AFC West games have always been tough. That rivalry, division games can always derail you. But I think now with all of these teams getting better and getting faster, and to go back to Gulbransen's point of view of, hey, this is going to be the Big 12 of the NFL, this division, I agree. So you're going to have to outscore people. It means a lot of exciting games for fans. Especially if you're watching on TV or in person here in Las Vegas, it's going to be fun. The one thing too, before we step aside for the bottom of the hour, I don't know if you guys listen to, and I invite our listeners to go over and subscribe in your favorite podcast channel to Just Pod Baby, which is our podcast, one of our podcasts here in the Silver and Black Media Group, that hosted by Evan Grote. He had on Amik Robertson, one of the guys that I love in the draft, and I think was one of those fourth rounders that Mike Mayock seems to nail now in his two drafts. But Meek Robertson, I think, has this mentality. And if you listen to all of the guys that the Raiders drafted this year, they all have this sort of tough guy, kind of really focused, I want to be great mentality. So I'm going to play you this clip from Just Pod Baby. You can go listen to the entire interview. If you're on YouTube watching us now, you can listen. You can find it on our YouTube channel, or you can go subscribe to Just Pod Baby, the podcast, as well on your favorite channel, iTunes, Google Play, wherever. But I wanted to play you guys this clip before we go to break, and we'll talk about it, which is Amik Robertson, and talking about what Raiders fans can expect in this fourth round draft pick out of Louisiana Tech.
Yeah, again, a guy, a very hard worker, passionate guy, you know, that love the game of football, love everything about the game of football. Team guy, that's going to work hard to earn his respect. You guys, love me, y'all appreciate me, but this is only the beginning. My goal is to be legendary. And my goal is to make an impact early, on the team, and not only win games, man, but win championships, because that's what it's all about. That's what we play the game for, to win and win championships. So I just can't wait to get started, man. I'm honored and I'm glad to be a part of a great organization.
All right, there you go, Amik Robertson. Good stuff, guys. We'll talk a little bit more about him later on. We're going to step aside for the bottom of the hour break. When we come back, Vinny Bonsignore from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, the Raiders beat writer. We're going to talk to him about the AFC West. We're going to talk to him about his impressions on the drafts. It's our first time catching up with him. And we'll ask him, do the Raiders have enough? And we'll also talk to him about his story. He just did a story on Tanner Muse. I know Kelly's got it on his refrigerator. We'll talk about that when we get back. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio.
You're going to hear silence during.
This message sponsored by the Nevada Department of Transportation, aired in cooperation with the Nevada Broadcasters Association and this station.
CBS Sports Radio.
This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Indeed. Welcome back to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. We were talking before the break about, do the Raiders have the best chance of competing with the Chiefs of anyone else in the AFC West? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that with a man who knows, because he covers the team and the NFL for a while. He's one of the best in the business. He is Vinny Bonsignore from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Vinny, how you and your family doing?
So far, so good. Kind of hanging in there, but we'll get through this safe and sound, and hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yes, absolutely, and it's good. I know we have the NFL schedule coming up on Thursday as planned. We're talking to Ben Fischer in the next hour from the Sports Business Journal about the schedule and the delay. We know that the stadium, we keep hearing your papers reported about the increased number of COVID-19 cases. I keep hearing from people I talk to in the organization that they're not concerned with the stadium being delayed. You hearing the same thing?
Yeah, as of right now, everything is a full go. Everything, it's more dependent on, where the NFL schedule falls, if it's on time or not. Obviously, there's going to be some contingency plans to fit either scenario. And, even if there was some sort of a delay in the stadium, which nobody's anticipating, but, in these uncertain times, you have to plan accordingly. There's ways the NFL can manipulate the schedule early on to accommodate, any sort of construction delay that might push back the opening of the stadium a little bit further. But they're not there at that point yet. But there are ways just in case that does happen.
All right, Vinny, now we haven't had a chance to talk to you since the NFL draft, but we want to get your overall impressions. I thought the Raiders did really, really well. I'm still struggling with, although I read your story in the RJ about Tanner Muse, I'm still struggling with that pick. I think the other picks I'm fine on, including the Arnett pick, which surprised me at first, but in watching more and more on him, I can see why. Is there a risk there? Yes. But overall, give us your assessment of what the Raiders were able to do in this draft, addressing their key needs.
Well, I think they obviously filled needs, wide receiver, cornerback specifically, and they did it in ways that are going to, especially offensively, when you talk about Lynn Bowden and you talk about Henry Ruggs and you talk about Brian Edwards, you're talking about guys that bring something different to the table that the Raiders didn't necessarily have last year, or just didn't have at all, and it allows them now, obviously guys got to get on the field and prove it, but if these players are who they thought that they were or are, it's going to allow them to go into games, on a weekly basis and be able to attack teams in different various ways. Still stay true to their core principles, but have weapons now that John Gruden and Derek Carr can tap into, and activate in ways that can put fear into other teams. Henry Ruggs, not only can he stretch the field, obviously, with the 4.2 40 speed, but, he's a threat. So he's going to open things up for a Josh Jacobs and a Darren Waller. Teams just have to account for that kind of speed. And Edwards, I think, was kind of a steal at the point in the draft that they took him. A big athletic weapon that you could use in the red zone, stretching the field in the middle of the field. So, I thought that they filled needs, and you couple that with what they did in free agency, and I think that this has been a really strong offseason for the Raiders, and I think they're taking steps, in the right direction.
No doubt. Again, we're talking to Vinny Bonsignore from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. And Vinny, when you look at this team, we keep hearing, and on all the conference calls that we were all on during the draft and you talking to folks after the draft, the narrative that we continue to hear, and I think it's the right one, which is, look, we have to address the Kansas City Chiefs situation. We are in the AFC West. They've become very Al Davis-like in being obsessed with the West, which you have to be. That's your division. And what the Chiefs do, because you're going to have to beat the Chiefs if you want to get there, if you want to win that championship, get that playoff berth as a divisional champ. When you look at what they've done, where do they still have needs to address that, Chief, to catch up? As Kelly said in the prior segment, he still thinks that the Raiders are just a little behind the Chiefs there. Clearly, they don't have a Patrick Mahomes, and that's not a slight on Derek Carr. It just is Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league right now, perhaps. So when you look at that, where are they in that chase to address all of the things they need to do to address the Chiefs in their own division?
Well, I think they're at a point now where, you can see the progress and you can see the talent and you can see, and there's a roadmap to being a much better football team, but obviously now they have to execute. So they bring in the type of players that they needed when you're talking about Corey Littleton and Nick Kwiatkowski, Malik Collins, Demarius Randall, Henry Ruggs, Brian Edwards. They've brought in the necessary talent. But they now have to put it all together, and that's a daunting task on one hand, but it's also promising on another, because it's not necessarily just a hope and a prayer. Like, there's really legitimate reason to be excited about this football team if you're a Raiders fan. But I think the most important thing, and everyone wants to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, and obviously they rule the AFC and the AFC West. But I think the Raiders just need to focus on being the best version of themselves and see where that takes them. Don't be disappointed, if you haven't closed the gap entirely on the Kansas City Chiefs. Try to close the gap on the teams that you're going to be dealing with to try to get to the playoffs, and then let the chips fall where they may. I think that's the next step for them. Yes, obviously, at some point you want to overtake the Kansas City Chiefs, but even more importantly right now and in the immediate future is catching up to everybody else in the AFC that you're competing with for playoff spots. And I think that they've done that on paper. Now they have to actually put it all together on the football field. And, there's a challenge in that because, you obviously we're seeing that they're doing a virtual off season right now. Everyone's trying to get the most out of that. The good news is everyone's on the same, kind of playing field, but it is a challenge for a younger team that's trying to, put all of this together. A lot of new faces. There was 12 free agents, a 7-man draft class. That's 19 new players, and many of whom they're going to be counting on big time to get it done, and they have to get acclimated and activated on a football team where they may not see their teammates literally until training camp. So closing that gap becomes even more of a challenge when you're not going to have the normal tools at your disposal to be able to put it all together in time for a football season.
Hey, Vinny, it's Kelly. Scott mentioned earlier some of the guys that got in the draft, and I was openly not excited about the Tanner Muse pick. And if you Google Tanner Muse Combine, basically the first sentence is how everybody was shocked at the 4.4 because it doesn't show up on film. What did the Raiders see in the film that made them decide they had to go out and get this guy?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I watched the film, and all I see is that dude, showing up and making plays. I think he kind of got caught up, or not caught up, but overshadowed on a really good defense. So he was one of those guys that just sort of, fell through the cracks on a larger basis. But also, you're in college for the most part. You're looking at him playing the position that he was playing, which was safety, which maybe he doesn't translate to safety in the NFL, which is why they're going to, probably bulk him up a little bit and hope that he doesn't lose any of that speed and play him at one of the linebacker spots. I think that's, obviously the vision for him. But he's a guy that, in today's NFL, if you watch what he did in college, they put him all over the field and matched him up, in matchup situations, which that's a lot of that is going on in the NFL. So if you can get him to a point where he could be sort of a chess piece type of a player, I think you've done well for yourself. Now, again, he has to go out on the field and prove it and justify the position that he was taken in the draft. But there are tools. He's more athletic, I think, than people are giving him credit for. Obviously, he flew the great 40 time, which got everybody's attention. Plus, he's a smart football player and versatile. So I think they're looking at somebody that, in time could be somebody that they can rely on as a starting player. But first and foremost, he's going to be a special teams player. And if I was him, I would saddle up to Corey Littleton, one of his fellow linebackers, and just watch how he goes about his business, because Corey Littleton came up through the special teams route. That's how he made the Rams as an undrafted free agent out of Washington, 4 or 5 years ago, and then slowly but surely proved that he could be a player that you could rely on as a every down defensive player, starting caliber player. But he was also making plays, blocking punts, coming up with fumbles, returning punts for touchdowns. He had a knack for making plays, and you started seeing that, and then you put him on the football field, always around the football, making plays, coming up with interceptions, sacks, the whole 9 yards. So if I'm Tanner Muse, that's the kind of guy that I'm going to try to emulate and make my mark early on special teams, and then take it from there.
Yeah, that'll be his chance. Now, Vinny, one of the things too that I've been watching closely lately, and I've been really excited about, and I think it bodes well for the Raiders, is the fact that in a series of interviews, including with your former colleague from The Athletic, Vic Tafur, and a couple others, Derek Carr, for the last couple minutes we have with you here, I love this edge that I'm seeing from Derek Carr, because no one's ever argued that Derek Carr is a hell of a guy. He's a great dude. He's a family guy, all that stuff. For all the polarization, and we've talked about it with you on this show before, on people who don't like Carr, don't think he's the answer, don't think he's going to make it, versus all those that defend him and say, no, he's a very good quarterback. He's the franchise quarterback he needs to be. I love this fire, this where he says he's not going to be politically correct and he's going to go out there. I think that edge, even though he was very comfortable and included on the signing of Marcus Mariota, like you talked about this week, I think having Mariota there, again, I've always said, having somebody behind you to push you is a good thing. Doesn't mean they're going to take your job. It's just there to make sure that you can be the best that you can be. Vinny, do you think that this new edge, this kind of what we're seeing out of Derek Carr, is going to translate like I do, that he's going to go out and he's going to play the best he possibly can this season when they finally get on the field?
Well, I think it's, it's interesting hearing him talk like that and all of that. But I think more importantly is, like any quarterback, you put good talent around him, and that's really going to be the difference maker. I think that Derek Carr is a capable quarterback. There's no question about that. But, like every other quarterback in the NFL, you also need help. And he hasn't had the necessary help probably his entire career. With the Raiders, it was always something, whether it was the defense, whether it was the offensive line, whether last year he didn't have, a top caliber wide receiver, somebody that could separate, or frankly, other wide receivers that couldn't get separation. And it kind of dictated where he went with the football. So I think that being able to improve the talent around him, and they've slowly but surely been able to do that. And I think, this draft could be the icing on the cake and make it complete. And I think with that kind of talent, now it's on Derek, and I think that he's going to follow through on this. Is him being able to orchestrate it and put it all together from the quarterback position. But more importantly than words and talk and no more politically correct, I think he's going to benefit, and and the players that are around him now are going to benefit together. It's going to be a mutual type of a thing. But the talent around him now is sufficient, I think. And I think he knows that and understands that. I'm sure he's chapping at the bit to get out there and prove what he's capable of doing with a good complementary cast, and it looks like he's finally got that.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a big year, and barring any kind of injury, anything like that, I expect him to quiet some of the critics. So we'll see. Vinny Bonsignore, Las Vegas Review-Journal. Vinny, as always, my friend, thank you, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
All right, guys, have a good one. Be safe.
All right, you too. Okay, we're going to step aside. When we come back, we'll close out the first hour. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140.
In this station.
CBS Sports Radio.
This is Cliff Branch, former of the Oakland Raiders, 3-time Super Bowl champ, 4-time Pro Bowl, and you're listening to the Silver and Black Show.
Welcome back to Silver and Black today as we close out our number one. Of course, number 21 bringing us back. Man, it would have been great for him to have lived to see this draft class and have him around guys like Henry Ruggs. Can you imagine, guys, the sessions with Ruggs, Bowden, and Edwards and these guys with Cliff Branch had he gotten this far?
Man, all that knowledge in Cliff Branch's head. I'd love for Cliff Branch's brain to be in Henry Ruggs' body right now.
Yes, it would be good. Okay, guys. So Vinny, we're talking about Vinny there, his draft class, and Kelly. Good question on Tanner Muse, because we've not been fans of that pick except for Chaz, but I think that as time goes on, the guy, the guy gets to prove himself, right? And I think when you look at this class, I think we're gonna focus on the wide receivers, and we're gonna see some of these kids who come out. The Meek Robertson, who you heard earlier from Just Pod Baby, those guys are going to be right out front. A Tanner Muse is going to take a little bit of time, and so I'm not going to look at him after training camp or after the first 4 or 5 games of the season and say, yeah, we were right. We'll have to see how it all ends up. But I do like every interview I've seen with these players, they all seem to have the same makeup, which tells me that Gruden Mayock plan of the type of guys that they want, Kelly, they are really executing. So maybe we don't see it, but they are building that chemistry and that piece, and we'll see if the talent level holds up.
Well, no, yeah, you said it. They definitely have a type that they go for. And Seattle's the same way. We always kind of look at their draft picks and ask what the hell they're doing. But, they have a certain type of player that they go after, and they find a way to make it work. So, yeah, for me, especially with just the Muse pick, they're like, well, he's going to start out on special teams. We're going to switch his position. We're going to add some weight, bulk him up, hope he doesn't lose any speed. That's not what you do with a third-round pick. You do that with a 4th, 5th, 6th round. You do that with a day 3 guy, not a day 2 guy.
Right.
Why don't they trade back again with that pick in the 4th round? Because are you really worried somebody's going to hop up in front of you to take Tanner Muse? My issue with the Raiders is I think they overvalue their analysis compared to everybody else's. The same thing with the Damon Arnett pick. Nobody was taking Arnett in the 1st round besides the Las Vegas Raiders. Yeah, it's a long night.
That's all right.
Yeah,
but
you look at the other 2 corners that were taking that, they were the complete opposite of Arnett. They were more of the speed athletic guys instead of the kind of tall, press man type of guys. So they could have traded from 19 anywhere in the 1st round, and we know they could have traded a couple different places and still got their guy. And they could have done the same thing with Tanner Muse.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, every draft is different, right? I mean, you can see how methodical Mike Mayock is in his preparation and approach. And, he obviously had, 2nd or 3rd round grades on players that other scouts and GM saw as 4th or 5th rounders. I'm guessing he had an analytics crew, gathering the data from the other mock drafts and other information to come up with a chart maybe to tell him where most players would get drafted. And that's why he was comfortable using the picks where he did.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, with picks, and to your point, Kelly, about maybe looking at their own evaluation and using it, and I mean, I guess that's what they're supposed to do, right? Is rely on it. And for us, we make snap judgments, and some of our listeners and viewers get angry and say, "Well, you guys know more than Mike Mayock." No, we don't. We take the information we have, and we're just giving you our view on what we think based on what we've seen from a player. Now, for the Raiders' sake, hopefully they're right and we're wrong. Like I don't have any problem admitting when I'm wrong and saying, you know what, we were wrong about Tanner Muse. I hope that's the case, because if that's the case, that means that the Raiders have a brilliance in talent evaluation that we don't know about yet, or is emerging. And so I think that when you look at that, fine, great. But at the same time, whenever you look at drafts, it takes a couple years. There are people last year who were saying Clelin Ferrell was a failure and that he was now you could say he was a reach at number 4, but they were saying that the Raiders made a mistake there. We don't know that yet. He came on towards the end of the year. He was moved inside, outside. If he plays a position more physically, or I should say consistently, not physically, consistently, then we'll see more out of him, and I think we'll be able to evaluate more on where some of these draft picks goes, and it's the same goes for the guys that they brought in this year. All right, we're going to step aside for the top of the hour news break. When we come back, an interview you don't want to miss. Gosh, if I could spit it out, is the NFL season going to start on time? We'll talk to Ben Fischer, Sports Business Journal, coming up right after this on CBS Sports Radio, on the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Radio.com is helping Las Vegas.
Oh, crack.
Right. Here we go. Be quiet during the segment.
No.
We've got your Raiders covered.
Knock
What?
on wood if you're with me.
It's Silver and
What are you
Black
talking about,
today
Scott?
On CBS Sports Radio 1140. And now, here's your host, Scott Gulbransen.
All right, welcome back to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas. Thanks for being with us. Don't forget, you can catch the latest Raiders news on our website, silverandblacktoday.com. If you haven't been there, check it out. Sign up. You can get our newsletter there and be informed of it. That. Also, make sure if you want to listen to this show after the fact, maybe you're out on your weekend and you missed it, you can always use the rewind feature in the radio.com app if you're listening to us nationwide, which we get a ton of folks all over the country. Make sure you do that. You can rewind up to 24 hours after the show ends. And if you miss that 24 hours and you still want to listen to the show, go subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can also subscribe to this show and listen to it after the fact or go back and listen to it. We also pull out some of the interviews from different segments and put those up as well. All right, so you're stuck in your house. The governor of Nevada just said May 15th now. We've been extended 2 weeks, so our schedules have all been delayed again. But the question now becomes, will the NFL's schedule be delayed? And just a story this week by Ben Fischer in the Sports Business Journal talking about if need be, the NFL could delay the season, could kick off the Super Bowl as late as February 28th. The season could start in mid to late October, and there could be no Pro Bowl. Imagine that. So now we are going to go out on the Newsmaker line and bring in Ben Fischer. Ben, of course, covers the NFL and Olympic sports for the Sports Business Journal. Ben, thanks for being with us today here on the Silver and Black Today.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. And I guess to set this all up from the baseline, a 101, we expect an NFL schedule to be released by next Saturday. People in the broadcast industry think it'll probably be Thursday, May 7th. And to be clear, they say that schedule is going to look like a normal year, 16-game, 17-week regular season that starts on September 10th, the Thursday after Labor Day, and ends on the Super Bowl on February 7th. But within that, our reporting is that it's going to be created in such a way that they could, without too much trouble, push everything back by up to 5 weeks, do some things within the schedule, and then shift the Super Bowl to the end of February and start as late as October 15th and still get 16 games in and still have the Super Bowl done in February, which are two big goals of theirs, retain a complete regular season if possible, and to keep the Super Bowl in February. And if what they're doing with this schedule is not saying they are certainly going to be able to do that, they realize, like everybody, that there are really broader questions about, adequate amount of testing and decrease in rates of disease and deaths before any of this happens. But they're hoping to put themselves in a position to salvage a full season, if at all possible, by sort of preparing for that step before you actually get to it.
Right, and that makes sense to me. I've always said that I thought at the very least, because a lot of folks, a lot of fans we hear from, get a little bit of doom and gloom, and they're like, "Oh, we're not going to have college football, we're not going to have pro football." And I said, "Listen, the NFL is a huge business. It's a big entertainment business. You cover it every day." And so I thought, no, at the very worst, what they'll do is if things start to look better as far as the pandemic is concerned, they might delay it or change it a little bit. And I always said, listen, until you start getting into late February, when you start to encroach on college basketball and its return, if it does return, and the NCAA tournament and the start of baseball and all that stuff, when it starts to get more crowded, that's what happens at the end of February. Now, when you talk about the fact that the schedule may be released, it's been slated to be released this first week of May. You also reported that there's maybe some pushback on it. What's the latest on whether or not we'll find out what the schedule looks like coming up this week?
Well, also all indications are that they are sticking with that. We were told that, there were some pretty important people. Nobody's more important than the commissioner and the half dozen owners that basically run the league. But important, respected people were telling league offices we really think it's a bad idea to put out a schedule, even with all the caveats and asterisks that will apply when we still have so little clarity about things. That was coming from some team executives who are worried about, upsetting their mayors in their hometown. Within 2 hours of the schedule being posted, someone sticks a microphone in Governor Newsom in California's face, or any local mayor that might have a regulatory say over this and say, so the Rams, for sake of argument, so the Rams say they're playing at 1 o'clock Pacific on September 13th. Are they, Governor? And that's not a path you want to go down until you absolutely have to. And then some ticketing people were concerned about the legal implications of putting tickets on sale for games that, right now we all admit are pretty unlikely to be played in front of full fans. So it seems like, though, 4 or 5 days after the draft, when Goodell was freshly considering this, that as of now, they still plan on releasing it next week. It's important to know they can back off that at any time. So I'm not telling you that it's definitely going to release it next week, but as of this moment, I think we should expect to see that schedule by this point next week.
Again, we're talking to Ben Fischer from Sports Business Journal about the NFL, its schedule, and possibility of it moving around and still getting in the 16 games. And Ben, in the original story that you wrote about this, you talked about some of the changes, and you mentioned some of them earlier on with still trying to get the 16-game schedule. But some of this includes maybe getting rid of the week between conference championships, getting rid of the Pro Bowl and all of that. Are those things that are finding any opposition at all, or are those those nice to haves? And particularly with the players union, could there be any pushback on that, because you now have players who are not getting weeks off, although they've had all these weeks off now in front? So right. I don't know. Are you hearing anything along those fronts?
The union has not really engaged much in this in any official or unofficial way, honestly. But the people who have pointed out in my Twitter mentions that the Players Association will never stand for a season that has 20 consecutive weeks for whoever's in the Super Bowl. Yeah, look, I'm aware that they would have a certain amount of say over this, and actually quite a bit of say for reasons that are getting into the subtleties of the collective bargaining agreement. So they're clearly going to have to get this past the Players Association. But if you get to that point, then you start getting into trade-offs. The league might say, hey, it's this plan and you get 16 game checks, or it's this plan and you only get 15 game checks or 12 game checks because we're only going to play half a season. It's impossible to figure out how those negotiations might go until you know what other facts are on the table. I think there's certainly a scenario in which the union says, if the price of playing a full season is don't get a bye week, we're okay with that. But, there's probably more scenarios in which they say, hey, that bye week is in the CBA for a reason, so let's stick with it. But, those are all questions to be determined. I think the NFL, the process that we were writing about in Monday's story really was almost just like the scheduling puzzle.
Right.
What can we do now to give us the best shot at playing a full season? We know we're going to have to go to the Players Association for that.
Well, as part of this, Ben, you also cover, of course, broadcast rights and all things TV related to the NFL, which is so driven by television, of course, especially from a revenue standpoint. When you look at this from a television standpoint and talk to your network contacts, if the schedules were to change and this to get a little more compact, how does that impact the broadcast schedule and how they look at it?
Well, I think at this point, the NFL has an extraordinary negotiating position with their broadcast partners. I think the broadcasters will take NFL games under any and all circumstances if they need to get those. They just rate so much higher than anything else. Heck, we're here sitting talking about how the Pro Bowl is expendable. The Pro Bowl outrates almost every NBA game, including playoff games. So the broadcasters, they'll put football on at 2 a.m. in late June, if that's what they have to do. Not to say they don't have concerns. We're talking about a real tight schedule. If all these sporting events that have been delayed in the last 2 months get rescheduled for October and November, it's not an easy day for the broadcasters. But believe me, NFL is on top of their list. They'll make it work.
Yeah. And before I let you go, Ben, just a question, covering the league and seeing how they've handled, and I know in your past you covered the healthcare industry, you covered tech, so you've had a wide range of duties as a journalist. When you look at the way the NFL has handled the COVID-19 response, at times they've been criticized because they weren't going to delay the draft. Of course, they changed the draft. They took it away from Las Vegas here, which was clearly the right thing to do because Las Vegas was closed anyway. But when you look at what they've done and what they now have to do to gain the trust of the public when it comes to whatever their plans are, if it's half full stadiums, if it's empty stadium, whatever it may be, how do you think they're going to chart that course? The NFL seems to go its own way. It is such a juggernaut that at times it seems like it doesn't pay attention to public perception or care much about it, but we know they do. Just from your opinion, what do you think is going to happen as we move forward and how they're going to handle all of this getting back to normal, whatever that is?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's so hard to predict the future. I will say, though, that the success of the starting of the new league year, free agency, and the draft has really emboldened the position of the front office that we should try to maintain business to the extent possible. I think 6 or 8 weeks ago, there was a lot of hesitation. There were people at some teams who were saying, we just need to shut it down. There's too much risk here. I think, those 3 events have lent a lot of clout and political capital to the people who are saying we should stay, all systems go to the extent possible. So I think that the money should be on the NFL continuing to act as if things are going to be normal for 2020 and just trying to buy themselves some time and push off the hard decisions about what the season really looks like as late as possible, just to try to gain more information and trying to map out what the season looks like. I'm with you. I guess I'm not sure that was you or somebody else, but I think the operating assumption inside the NFL right now is that the season will occur, and that probably they'll find a way to play 16 games. But the range of possibilities beyond that, are there no fans anywhere? Are there 30 different jurisdictional situations? And then what does that mean for competitive balance? Is it an advantage that the Cowboys get to play in front of 80,000 people at home games and the Rams have to play in front of nobody? Owners might not like that. So you get into a really difficult to predict situation around there. But I think, the NFL is going to be all systems down until they decide they absolutely can't. And by can't, I mean legal prohibition, mainly, on what they're allowed to do.
Right. Yeah, it's fascinating. And like you said, you can't predict the future. Things with this situation are changing daily. We go back and forth, positive, negative, and so it all depends on what happens when they get to that kind of point of no return when they have to make decisions. One other question for you before we let you go, certainly this time, is with Las Vegas. Clearly, we're becoming a new NFL market. The stadium here, despite the COVID-19 issue, is on track and is going to be completed. Are you hearing how much that'll play into the plans of the NFL when it comes to the national games on TV and whether or not Las Vegas will be highlighted along with Los Angeles and their new stadium?
Yeah, I mean, I think even before all of this, the operating assumption was that the first home game in Vegas for the Raiders would be a major national TV event, either that first Thursday, opening Thursday, or one of those prime Sunday night games in that first week. I think that should still be the operating assumption. What that looks like, though, if they have to wait till October to play, might be tougher. They might backload games in cities where they're going to have a longer path toward reopening. So that might be more of a story in California than in Las Vegas. I think the only reason that vision for like a big opening gala type event for the Raiders wouldn't come to pass is if the NFL made a decision that they're going to start a season in the pursuit of playing all 16 games, but that, you couldn't play in front of a lot of fans. At which point they might say, what do you say you go on the road for the first month and maybe we'll give you your proper full stadium experience later on in the season.
Makes sense. Ben Fischer from the Sports Business Journal. We appreciate you being with us, my friend, and take care of yourself.
Sure thing. You too. Thanks for having me.
Well, there you have it. The latest on the NFL season and the Raiders obviously being a part of that. What might happen. So we appreciate, again, Ben Fischer, one of the best in the business, covers it from the business perspective, and we wanted to bring you that. All right, we're going to step aside when we come back. The Silver and Black today rolls on here on this beautiful Sunday in Las Vegas. Don't go anywhere.
beat over Las Vegas.
877 cars for kids. KARS cars for kids.
Sounds like a sweet smoky cowboy.
Not sure if Chaz is just saying that or if that was his actual defense.
Donate your car today.
Horrible bosses. And they kept, the little guy was a sex offender or whatever. He's like, they shouldn't put a playground right next to a bar. You know, and that was like the whole movie was him being a sex offender.
Radio.com wants you to not be.
Got your Cats Meow right here.
Cats Meow, Indianapolis there, Kelly.
I've been there.
Yeah. What is it? A bar?
Yes.
10.
For more, go to radio.com/stay connected.
Stand by.
CBS Sports Radio.
The only way to take Silver and Black Today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
All right, welcome back to the Silver and Black Today on this windy Sunday in Las Vegas, where we have hit the 90s, hundreds around the corner, a little early for us, but that's okay. I'll take it over snow or any of the other stuff. So we appreciate you being with us. This segment, we're going to talk to a good breakdown guy, Sanjit Toor, who has a great and popular YouTube channel, Sanjit T. You can find it on YouTube. He breaks down film of the Raiders, players, plays during the season, you name it, he does it, talks a lot about the draft. We're going to bring Sanjit on here in a second. What I want to do, though, is we're going to focus on one of the guys that I'm actually excited about, and it's a little bit hot and cold. You talk to people around the league, you see what people say. Some think he's a gimmick. Others really believe that he's one of the steals of the draft for the Raiders, and that's Lynn Bowden, and Lynn Bowden Jr. out of Kentucky, who played quarterback. He can play receiver. He can play running back, which is where Mike Mayock said he would. And first what we're going to do is we're going to play you what Mike Mayock said about Lynn Bowden, and then we'll bring Sanjit in. Here's Mike Mayock on Lynn Bowden and what he brings to the Raiders.
Lynn Bowden, we announced as a running back, and ultimately he'll probably be what we call a joker, which I love in John's offense, somebody that's able to do multiple jobs. But day one, he's going to come in and be a running back. In the SEC 2 years ago, he caught 60 to 70 passes as a slot. Last year, as you guys know, he was a quarterback / wildcat, gained over 1,000 yards. We think he's one of the most athletic, tougher guys in this draft. We're going to train him to be a running back, and if he's able to handle that job, we'll be able to do some other things with him, move him around, let him catch the football, return punt. He's a really good punt returner. So that'll be his role initially.
All right, there you go. Mike Mayock on the conference call during the draft with all of everybody's Zoom and phones ringing in the background. But now we bring in our good friend, Sanjit Toor. Sanjit, thanks for being with us here on the Silver and Black Today.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm really looking forward to just talking Raiders.
All right, so let's jump in on this, Sanjit. Lynn Bowden, this guy, you see his bio in the Kentucky media guide. Of course, it's got the, in some cases, dreaded athlete designation, which is a lot of times you have kids who are very athletic, so they switch them around a different position. In the case of Lynn Bowden Jr., this is a guy who played quarterback out of need, and if you listen to and watch what he said about playing quarterback, everyone was telling him not to, saying, no, man, you're going to be a top 2-round pick at wide receiver if you stay at that position, but he did that for his team, basically, and he went out and he balled. He did well at quarterback. He's not going to be, in my view, a quarterback in the NFL. But talk about his versatility. When you look at his film, what is it about him as an athlete, no matter if he's playing quarterback, running back, or wide receiver, that makes him so explosive and a steal for the Raiders?
Yeah, you touched on a lot of that. He is versatile, right? He was a second-team All-SEC in 2018 as an all-purpose player, right? Which means he was returning kicks, he was playing in the slot, he was playing out wide receiver, he was playing running back, right? He was getting some touches. The guy's versatile, and we all see that. And it's crazy to kind of think that he was an All-SEC second-team player in 2018, and he was going to go in the first or second round. And because the team needed him to play quarterback, he did it. He put aside the fact that he can go in the first or second round. Switch to quarterback could have possibly hurt him more than it. He ended up going with in the third round. He could have fell even further, but he still went ahead and did it. And he played well, right? In my opinion, I think the versatility he brings is what really got Mayock and Gruden to jump all over him, because we see the Chiefs do it all the time, right? When they get Tyreek Hill or Cole Hardman to go into motion. I think the Raiders with Henry Ruggs as well as Lynn Bowden are going to do that, right? They're going to get these guys going in motion. They're going to fake it to them. They're going to make the defense, like John Gruden says, not only cover them north and south, but east and west as well, right? And that's exactly what he can bring for us, right? That versatility. It's going to be huge. He can do so many different things, and like Mayock touched on it, he's going to play that joker position for us. But, the more I watch him, it's hard to find actual film of him playing running back, right? In the true sense where he lines up behind the quarterback and he gets the ball and he runs between the tackles, right? That's very hard for him to find. He didn't do a whole lot of that. But that's what Mike Mayock says that he will do for the Raiders. And, of course, Mike Mayock has hit with a lot of his picks. So definitely trust what Mike Mayock has to say about that.
Hey, Sanjit, it's Kelly. Yeah, you just mentioned that he rarely would I think the actual running back term is what people are kind of spending too much time looking at, because he's not lining up behind a fullback on 3rd and 1 and running straight up the line. What do you see his actual role being? Because, like you said, it's going to be more of an athlete, but the actual running back definition, people seem to be hung up on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in my opinion, one of the things Josh Jacobs did in college that he did not do in the NFL was he didn't take a whole lot of direct snaps, right? And, of course, when Bowden's in quarterback, he did a lot of that. But I think when it comes to running back, last year the Raiders didn't do a whole lot of two running back sets. And they didn't put Josh Jacobs at wide receiver. But in college, Josh Jacobs played a lot of slot. So, in my opinion, when it comes to Lynn Bowden, I think a lot of what we can do is Lynn Bowden, Josh Jacobs in the backfield, Carr in shotgun, and maybe we put Josh Jacobs out in the slot, right? We're motioning him out. Or maybe we motion Lynn Bowden out. Or maybe we have Josh Jacobs lead block for Lynn Bowden, and Bowden takes a run to the outside, right? But as far as true running back, I don't think Lynn Bowden's going to run a whole lot from the I formation with a fullback in front of him for 1 yard through the, tackle to tackle. I don't think we're going to get a lot of that from Bowden.
Yeah, again, we're talking to Sanjit Toor from the Sanjit T YouTube channel. If you haven't seen his breakdowns of Raiders film and the draft picks, and he does them during the season, of course, of Raider Plays, make sure you do and go over and subscribe to his YouTube channel, which is growing really, really fast. But Sanjit, when you look at Bowden and what he's able to do as an athlete, especially when he gets outside. Now, a lot of people, of course, have this grudge against Derek Carr, and they want anybody who can throw the ball to try to unseat. And I look at Bowden. He's not going to be an NFL quarterback per se, but talk about sets where he can actually come in. And if you're a defense, you don't know if he's back there to throw the ball. People know, of course, about the Wildcat. But there's a lot that John Gruden's going to be able to do now, right? Where he can line him up in the backfield, send him out as a receiver, toss him the ball as a running back, or toss him the ball and throw it downfield, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. He did throw the ball in college, so it's not like he never threw the ball. I think he threw the ball almost 80 times in 2019, and he's not a bad quarterback, right? I mean, he can definitely throw the ball. But in the sense of being a quarterback who's going to sit back in the pocket, make the reads, he's not going to do any of that. But you're right? We can have him go in motion, hand him the ball, and maybe it's Henry Ruggs running 40, 50 yards deep, and he throws it out there, and Henry Ruggs goes and catches it. Right? It just adds this whole new dimension. And then on top of that, we'll have plays where it'll be Anthony Lynn and Josh Jacobs in the backfield, and Lynn can read the read option, right? He can run the triple option. There's so much that he can do, that he brings to this offense, that as a defense, it's going to be hard to defend, right? You have to be ready for any possible situation that can come up, right? John Gruden's a very good offensive coach, right? He's a good offensive mind. He knows how to draw up plays. He knows how to coach players, and he can get the best out of players. And I think he'll definitely do that with Bowden.
Sanjit, we have about a minute left with you. Looking at Bowden's tape, what is the one thing that he's got to do the most work at to get better?
I think he needs to definitely improve in his route running, right? Especially if he's going to line up in the slot. I think route running is going to be the biggest thing he needs to improve at. He is good when he has the ball in his hands. A player that he reminds me of is a player like Deebo Samuel for the San Francisco 49ers. Lynn Bowden breaks a lot of tackles. He can make people miss. But he needs to work on how he's going to get the ball right, his route running. In my opinion, and just to touch on this really quickly, he's very competitive, and I think that is what's going to make him a very good football player. He's competitive and he's passionate.
That's awesome. Sanjit Toor, of course, check him out on YouTube. His breakdowns are amazing. Sanjit T is the channel on YouTube. Sanjit, again, we'll have you on real soon. We appreciate you being with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
I'm really excited about this guy. I think he's going to be fantastic, and it'll be fun to watch in so many ways because they're going to be able to do so much with him. All right, we're going to step aside. When we come back, one of the final two, Kelly's Corner, here on Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio.
Culinary?
/relief. From links to nonprofits and classes to tips on rent and mortgage, visit the free.
Need extra time here.
This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gulbransen.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. We are in the home stretch. A quick shout out on YouTube. One of our YouTube viewers, one of the guys who watches us almost every week, Anthony Ruiz, thought that our segment with Sanjit was too quick. It was the normal length of all our segments. And then he was questioning whether we were really live. I know he was kidding, but Anthony, we're obviously live because I'm saying hello to you. So anyway, but no, thanks to Sanjit Toor for being on with us. And we will have him on again, with breakdown guys. And Kelly, you're very technical too. When you have breakdown stuff, you could spend an hour talking about one person. So I don't know that a segment doing a breakdown is ever going to be long enough to please everybody. But it certainly is something that we love doing, and we appreciate him coming on. All right, this time, this show, this segment is always about Mr. Kelly Kreiner. And as we announced earlier in the show, Kelly's going to be stepping aside and leaving the show to pursue some other things that he's got going. And so these are the last two Kelly's Corners on a weekly basis. We hope we can get Kelly to maybe call me every once in a while when he's got an epic rant, and then we'll put it on and we'll bring him back here and there when he feels like it. But we are now going to toss it over to Kelly and allow him to expand on whatever he'd like. So here's Kelly's Corner.
I guess it would be a Kelly's Corner if I didn't take the time to take a shot at my favorite NFL coach, Sean Payton. Because, man, not only is he the smartest guy in the room, he's now starting to outsmart everybody else in the NFL. Tommy Stevens. Ooh, gotta have Tommy Stevens, because he's a quarterback that failed at 2 colleges, but he's the next Taysom Hill. Ooh, good job. Yay. So if Taysom Hill's the Swiss Army knife of football, Tommy Stevens is the Chinese cheap knockoff Swiss Army knife of football. He wanted Tommy Stevens so bad, he starts calling him. Because any time in the draft, in that late 5th, 6th round, teams will start calling guys they don't think are going to be drafted and say, hey, after the draft, we're going to look at you as a UDFA, try to bring you in and everything. Well, Sean Payton, for some reason, because he's smarter than everybody else, really wanted Tommy Stevens. So he starts calling him, and Tommy's like, well, hey, I've already talked with the Carolina Panthers. I want to go play in Carolina. I gave him I gave my word if I didn't sign, I would go there. So I'm going to go there. Well, the Saints upped their offer. Okay. Tommy Stevens still said, hey, I gave him my word. I want to stick to my word. So the Saints upped their offer again. He was like, no, hey, I'm going to Carolina. So the Saints trade a 6th-round draft pick next year for a 7th-round draft pick this year to draft Tommy Stevens. I love the pettiness of this move by Sean Payton, because he had a guy he wanted and he went out and got him. But now the NFL's probably going to be penalizing the Carolina Panthers and all of this stuff, because it's against the rules to have a deal with people and while the draft is still going on. The second the draft is over, you can start making deals with undrafted people. But here's the thing. You don't really have a deal with them. You just have a player that says, if I don't get drafted, I'm going to your team. So it's going to be fun to see how this comes out, because there's already articles about how the Carolina Panthers are going to be fined, or they're going to have some kind of penalty from the NFL for doing this. And I'm like, why? You don't have a deal set, because you may have an agreement that, hey, we want you, we're going to give but that ain't a deal. As we just saw, that deal fell through. So how can you penalize the Carolina Panthers for a deal on something when there's no actual deal in place? You just have a guy that says, I want to play in Carolina, I don't want to play in New Orleans. That's what that was. That wasn't a deal, that was a guy giving his preference to go somewhere. So we're going to see how this works out. It's probably going to fly under the radar with all this other crap going on. But it just shows how some of the rules the NFL have are so stupid and arbitrary. Kind of like the legal tampering period. If it's legal, it's not tampering. That's the dumbest crap I've ever heard in my life. Get that. I mean, this stuff is just so stupid. The NFL has just such a minutia that they deal with during the season that's pointless and a waste of time. And this is another part of it. Also, if you have the next Steve Young on your team, why do you go out and get 2 quarterbacks in the offseason when you already have a Hall of Famer in front of him? So apparently, the next Steve Young is not only a guy you don't want to throw the football, because as we all know, I have more empty water bottles sitting next to my couch than Taysom Hill has career touchdown passes. But also, as we mentioned, Harry and the Henderson has more Oscars. Still my favorite stat. But you go out and you sign Jameis Winston for $1 million, which is a great deal because it's dirt cheap. But now you're also getting Taysom Hill 2.0 when you got Taysom Hill 1.0, and you still don't let him play quarterback. Good job, Sean Payton. Way to take up a roster spot on a team that's ready to win a Super Bowl with two dudes you don't want throwing the football, and you have their quarterback.
It's crazy, but Kelly, when you look at that, like for example, we just talked about Lynn Bowden, right, with the Raiders. He keeps getting compared to Taysom Hill. I don't think they're similar players at all.
They're not even. I mean, it's not even close. Tommy Stevens is nowhere near the athlete that Taysom Hill. He's a similar size, and he can't throw the football. That's the only two things they have in common. Tommy Stevens was supposed to be the savior of Penn State. They're like, oh wait, he's not very good as a quarterback, so he goes to Mississippi State and does even less. So congratulations. You drafted a guy that failed at two schools. He's the Cliff Kingsbury of college quarterbacks.
Well, and you talked about rules and the whole stupid legal tampering language and all that stuff. Now that they've said that the owners meeting coming up in May here, coming up this was going to be virtual because of all this. So they're not getting together for the Billionaire Boys Club in person. So they're going to do this. And Chaz, when you start to see things like what Sean Payton's complaining about and talking about, from your perspective, being a scout in the NBA and seeing how front offices work too in professional sports, is that sometimes just a way to put stuff out there? When you were getting close to meetings where there might be rules designations happening in the NBA, did you guys sometimes maybe seed stories out there and like try to get a discussion around a topic that might be important to you?
Yeah, you see that a lot, but most of the time it is, like he said, the deal with the Panthers, he probably had a half a dozen teams that said, we want you after the draft, we're going to pick you up. And that's just his prerogative to pick the Panthers. Maybe he's got something going on down there. He likes it better or whatever situation he thinks is the best for him. So we would do that after, right after the draft's over, everybody's on the phone and you're trying to lock down, guys for the summer league and guys that you want for training camp. And so it's the same kind of situation. And no, I don't think we ever really try to do any manipulations. I think when you have, different teams are more attractive than others. So, in our situation, we kind of had a lot more people that wanted to come to our situation. So we didn't really have to, circumvent any rules or kind of go behind the scenes. And, I love the oxymoron legal tampering. That's a great term. So we were kind of in a better spot, easier position where kind of guys and agents and things, they would kind of funnel players towards us because we were more a desirable situation than others. But I can see where, it's just this kid's prerogative. If he wants to go play in Carolina for whatever reason, I'm sure he had 2 or 3 other spots that were telling him, hey, we'll bring you over here. And it's his pick.
Kelly, because of your focus on Sean Payton, if you could sit down and interview him, what would be the first question that you would ask Sean Payton in a face-to-face interview?
Well, first, let me say the reason Tommy Stevens wanted to go to Carolina was Joe Brady, who turned Joe Burrow into the #1 draft pick, is in Carolina now, and Tommy worked with him at Penn State. So he has that familiarity with that coaching staff. That's the main reason he wanted to go to Carolina. The first question I would ask Sean Payton, I was like, if you honestly think that Taysom Hill is the next Steve Young, when you put him on the field, why don't you have him throw the football? Because everybody knows he's not throwing the football. So you're taking one of the greatest passers in the history of the game off the field and putting another guy in his place, and everybody knows he's not going to throw the damn football because he's not very good at it.
But Kelly talked about what Scott was asking you was the Lynn Bowden Taysom Hill comparison.
I know Sanjit said that if you watched, he threw the ball like 80 times. As someone who watched every Kentucky game as a Kentucky fan, Lynn Bowden cannot throw the football. Like it's. Okay.
You mean throw? Wait! Whoa! You mean throw the football as in like someone who would play quarterback?
I mean throw the football as in period.
Period. So out of the backfield as a running back.
As a Kentucky fan, the last thing you wanted to see him do was have that football leave his hand. You knew he was going to run the ball every single time. That's what you wanted because he cannot throw. I mean, he cannot throw. Period. He can't throw for a quarterback. He can't throw for a running back. He can't throw for an offensive lineman.
Okay,
I love the kid.
No halfback option.
No, pass. I mean you'll probably see it every now and then, but man, there's a reason that he ran for as many yards as he did, and he only threw the ball 80 times. He can't throw.
All right. Well, Kelly always tells it like it is in Kelly's corner, so we get what we ask for, right? All right, we're gonna.
Coming from a guy who likes Kentucky.
I
like
know,
Lynn
that's-
Bowden. The kid's got more heart than anything.
Yeah.
But he just can't throw the football.
Well, no, I was going to say you talked about him all season, by the way, during the college football season too. So it was somebody that you were well familiar with. All right, we're going to step aside for a final break. When we come back, we'll close out the show. We'll talk about what we have left, including the NFL schedule and what the guys think might happen. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio.
CBS Sports Radio.
Hi, this is Steve Wisniewski, and you're listening to the Silver and Black Today.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140, May 3rd, 2020. Next week is Mother's Day. That's right. So our show, we're going to have a recorded show. It'll be all new, fresh material, but it will be recorded. So Anthony, next week it will not be live. So we will not be faking it. We will be telling you in advance. Anyway, we're back talking Raiders football. And guys, we talked about the NFL schedule coming out this week, and there's so many unknowns. We don't know if they choose to start the season late into October, which, if you guys remember, several weeks ago, I actually talked about that and thought that made the most sense because the NFL had time. They could move, and Kelly, I think you mentioned it, and which is what Ben Fischer said at the top of the hour when we talked to him about the NFL schedule, which was you could move the Super Bowl into late February and still be okay. You're not going to be running up against March Madness for the most cases, if they do have March Madness, which we still don't know that either. But when you look at the schedule, guys, I think moving it a few weeks would not be terrible, especially if that means that there can be fans in the stadium. If they're faced with the option of, we can kick off the season in early September, but we can only have 20% capacity in the stadium, or we can wait till October 15th and we can have more than likely full stadiums, or at least complete or close to full stadiums. Don't you think that would be the better option?
Well, that's kind of the problems because you can't really guarantee anything at this point. So
True.
it's not like you're saying, you know what, we're going to hold off for 5 weeks, but everything's going to be fine. You can't really do that, because and the other thing, it's like if you bring in and say, well, we're going to we can't have a full stadium. We can only have it, say, at 30% capacity and spread everybody out. How many season ticket holders do you have that have paid for those seats already? That's going to be your biggest issue with trying to get. If you kind of have to go all or nothing on this, because you can't tell one person's like they paid for their PSL, they paid for tickets. Oh, but you don't get your seat because that other guy 5 seats over gets his. That's going to be lawsuits. That's going to be everything. So for the NFL, they're kind of stuck in this thing. It's like you either have to open that up to everybody or open it up to nobody. And I don't think holding off on, let's say, like 4 or 5 weeks, moving the season back, you're going to have enough clarity to be able to say that.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I think the biggest thing that we heard and we talked to Ben about too, if you think about it, is competitive balance too. Because as he said, imagine you're in Dallas and Texas says, yeah, we can have full stadiums. Let's say that's where they're at. And you have 85,000 seats at Jerry's World, and you have the Cowboys hosting the Eagles in a big divisional game. And then you go to Philly for the other side of that rivalry, and there's 0 people in the stands. I mean, that's not from a competitive situation. It's not fair and equitable. So to me, you're right. It has to be all or nothing. Either you're going to have all the fans there, or you're not going to have any fans there.
Yeah, and I mean, it's unfair for all those like people that buy tickets for Charger games that are fans of the other team to be like told, well, hey, we're sorry. We know that 50,000 Eagles fans bought tickets for this game. We can only let 20,000 of you in. The 9 Charger fans don't care. They're not going to sit by each other or anybody. They don't want anybody to know they're a Charger fan. So that would, but yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing is like anytime, like even with the players, say, like I've said before, say in week 4, the quarterback of a team gets corona, and it's like, okay, well now do we have to quarantine the whole team for 2 weeks? What do you do with the game at that point? There's just so many unknowns right now. Saying to move, even if you say you're moving something back a few weeks to get more clarity, that sounds great and it's a good PR move, but it's not like those 5 weeks the world's going to magically fix itself.
No, and to me, the one thing that I'm concerned about, and I'm not, like I said, these doom and gloom people, I don't care if they're talking about life, if they're talking about entertainment or football, whatever, it drives me nuts that when people just go to the most negative possibility that could happen. And I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying when people live in that area where everything is going to be terrible and life will never touch human beings again, we'll never do any of this. It's like enough of that. What I am concerned with though, Kelly, is in Las Vegas here. And sorry, we lost Chaz Boff. I guess his internet line got cut or something, so he's off. So we'll see him next week. But when we talk about the Raiders coming to Las Vegas, we had all of these plans. We had, and I know people had weddings and all these things that have been canceled because of this. But the Raiders coming to Las Vegas, the relocation, you had the draft that was going to kick that all off. That's gone, right? That was canceled. It was the right thing to do. We understand why it happened. We're getting it back in 2 years. Great. But now you have this new stadium where you sold out this massive amounts, as you talked about, PSLs and seats and all this kind of stuff. Can you imagine you opening a new stadium with all this excitement, all these season ticket holders coming to Las Vegas, and they can't come? I think it's a possibility. I think at the end of the day, in my view, all that I'm reading, the numbers are getting better. There's certain areas where it's not happening as quickly. But I think if we start to look at September and we start to look at when people would be in stadiums, I'm hoping that we're in that position, because it would really suck for Las Vegas and for the Raider organization to have done all of this. And especially for us, we need the business. We need people to come in, not if they're going to get sick, but we need people to come in and stay in Las Vegas again, because the state has been shut down and we rely on it. So Kelly, this is a big deal, not only for the Raiders, but for our city.
Well, as I say, you mentioned like right there just for the city, and you see that you're saying that the numbers in the U.S. and stuff are starting to kind of level out, and we're starting to get past peaks and stuff there. But Russia the other day, yesterday, just had 10,000 new cases in a day. That's the most they've ever had. Brazil right now is seeing the most, and Las Vegas is a city where everybody from the planet comes to. So we're like the cities like New York, LA, Vegas, we're at way more of a chance from that coming from somewhere else and being brought back into the US, being brought back into here, which would reignite another hotspot or anything like that. So I mean, yeah, it'd be awesome to have Raiders Stadium open, and it'd be awesome to see a full stadium on week 1. But you also you got to look at all the other stuff. It's like I would much rather have an NFL season with nobody out there, as long as I just have football and say, okay, 2021, we're opening this new stadium in LA. We're opening up this new stadium in Las Vegas. To me, it would be nice to have fans in the stands, but if my options are no football or no fans, give me no fans at all. I mean, I'm fine with that. I can sit at home and watch on my computer. I can watch on TV. I just want football.
Yeah, I think that, to me, worst case scenario, best case scenario is things get back to normal and everybody's allowed to go to the games. Worst case scenario to me is they just do it for television, because I think that would help. And you might be able to do it where, you get through 8 games and they're reassessing every couple weeks, and you have no fans for 8 games. And then once the 8th week comes, it's gotten to the point where they say, okay, now people can congregate and then go to football games. And then you can let fans in. So we'll see what they do. I mean, we'll find out a lot more with the schedule release this week. And I think that'll give us a sense for what they're thinking and where they may go. And they may say, look, we just don't know a ton right now, so we're going to have to defer some of that till later. But it'll be interesting, Kelly. But thanks, man. I appreciate it as always.
Yeah, we'll have to see how the Raiders get screwed on the schedule.
Yeah, that's true too. We'll see how that goes down. All right, for Chaz Osborne, who left us a little early due to some technical issues, and Kelly Kreiner, I'm Scott Gulbransen. Appreciate you guys being here. We'll be back next week, going to 1 hour for our summer hours as we do every year. But we will be back with fresh content, so don't go anywhere. Thanks to Mark Bonilla, our executive producer and engineer. And to all of you, and may the autumn wind always be at your back. We'll talk to you next week here on the Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140. Take care, everybody.